What's up guys, I'm Zach and this is Yosemite. It's been a while since I put out a video. Some of you may know that Yosemite had a bit of an accident about 2 weeks ago. He leapt out of the van window while we were driving through Petrified Forest National Park. He broke his knee really badly on his back left leg and had to have it amputated. Now he's fully recovered from his surgery and he's getting the hang of running, jumping, and moving around the van. So we've just been hanging out in the van while he's recovering. Plus with the whole coronavirus situation, I haven't been venturing out. I've had a lot of spare time on my hands. So here are some of the things I've done to keep busy and just some general updates. A couple days ago, I used an old pocket knife to scratch this three-legged tiger into one of my cabinet doors. You may have noticed that I'm not wearing my normal purple hat because it got so gross, sweaty, and disgusting. So the company that makes it, Kavu, sent me 2 new ones. This one, which is sort of a like polyester tie-dye style, and also this cloth khaki one. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I've also added these 2 weather dials just below the sink. They were my grandfather's. This one is a hygrometer which measures air humidity, and there's also a thermometer on it. And this one is a barometer which measures air pressure. And lastly, all this downtime has allowed me to reflect on all the places I've been. I've updated my map which shows every place I've driven in my van. I've color-coded it into 7 distinct trips. So now I'll go through and explain it a little bit. My very first trip was Test Run with Yas in early May. We drove from Chicago, Illinois, all the way to upstate New York, where we visited our buddy Rafe at Bard College. And then I continued up to Vermont to see some college friends and my brother. And then I drove back home. My second run was my first trip east in the summer, where I drove from Lake Delton, Wisconsin, all the way down through Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee to Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And then I drove up through Virginia to Shenandoah National Park. And then I visited my grandma and my cousins near DC. And I drove all the way up to Rhode Island to visit my aunt, and then back to Vermont to see my college friends. And then all the way through upstate New York to Niagara Falls, and then through Ontario, Canada, through Michigan, all the way back home. In late summer, I drove with my friend Lexi west through Badlands National Park, Wind Cave National Park, and then south through Cheyenne, and dropped her off where she lives near Denver. After that starts my Western Exploration Run, where I drove from Denver all the way up through Wyoming. I went skydiving in Bozeman, Montana. I drove up to Glacier National Park. I hung around in the Flathead Valley, and then headed west through Idaho and into Washington. In Washington, I drove up to North Cascades National Park. I hung around the Seattle suburbs for a little while. I took a ferry across the Puget Sound to the Olympic Peninsula, which contains Olympic National Park. I went over to Mount Rainier National Park and then worked my way down to Portland, Oregon. From Portland, I explored some national forest by the coast. I also went to the Mount Hood National Forest, worked my way down to Bend, Oregon, and then headed over to Cape Perpetua, which is just a scenic area in one of the national forests right on the coast. Absolutely beautiful. And then I worked my way down to Oregon's only national park, which is Crater Lake, which is right here. And after Crater Lake, I went south into California. I went to Lassen Volcanic National Park, and then over to the Redwoods, which is right on the coast. Then I worked my way down the coast. Just before hitting San Francisco, I took a hard left towards Yosemite National Park. From there, I worked my way down all the way to Southern California. Around here, I went to Channel Islands National Park, and I worked my way up to San Francisco, where my mom flew out to meet me. And then I worked my way back down. I went to Pinnacles National Park. I tried to take the scenic route and go to Big Sur, but it was very foggy when I went. I stayed in Santa Barbara for about 4 months. Shout out Lily and the girls. I was working, and I also got Yosemite just before I left for Yosemite's Ocean Sandwich in February. So Yosemite and I drove through Southern California to Joshua Tree National Park, and then down hugging the border of Mexico to Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument. And then we drove to Tucson, where Saguaro National Park is, and then across the border into New Mexico to White Sands National Park near Alamogordo, and then over to Carlsbad Caverns National Park and Guadalupe Mountains National Park in Texas. From there, we dropped down into Big Bend National Park and then all the way across the state of Texas to Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas. After that, we shot over to Tuscaloosa, Alabama to visit my buddy Lev, and then all the way through Georgia to Congaree National Park in South Carolina. Now, it wouldn't be an ocean sandwich if we didn't visit the other ocean. So we made a quick stop to Charleston, South Carolina to see the sunrise over the Atlantic. From there starts the next run, visiting home, where Yosemite and I drove from Charleston, South Carolina, up to briefly revisit the Smoky Mountains, and then over to Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky, and then we bounced up to Bloomington, Indiana to visit my buddy AJ, and then over to Champaign, Illinois to visit a bunch of my friends who go there, and then back home to visit Chicago. After visiting home, we started our most recent trip, Route 66 cut one leg short, where we drove from Chicago all the way through Illinois to St. Louis. That's where the Gateway Arch National Park is, through Missouri, and just before crossing the border into Oklahoma, I just nicked Kansas just to say I had been there. Kansas is the 47th state I've been to, and Oklahoma was the 48th. So all that's left now is Hawaii and Alaska. So we went through Oklahoma to Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Amarillo, Texas, into New Mexico. We crossed through Santa Rosa. We detoured from Route 66 a little bit and went up to Santa Fe, through Albuquerque, and then over across the border into Arizona. In Arizona, we were in Petrified Forest National Park doing some exploring. That's where Yosemite had his accident, and we had to drive to Flagstaff, which is along Route 66, but that's where the veterinary clinic was. And since then, we've been just kind of in that area, a little bit south of Flagstaff, near Sedona. So we've caught up to where we are now. The weather here has been spectacular, and there have been a couple of amazing sunsets. Make sure to check out my Redbubble page linked in the description below if you want to buy a sticker or a print. This spring, I was actually supposed to be working my way north through, that's the Grand Canyon right there where the Colorado River runs through. And there's like 10 national parks between like this corner of Utah and this area of Colorado. But you know, this whole coronavirus thing is sort of messing up my plans right now. It seems like it's messing up everyone's plans. So I've decided I'm just gonna lay low in Arizona and wait for all this to blow over. Those national parks will still be there when this is all done with. Hope you guys like the explanation of my map and the other updates. I also hope everyone is keeping their distance and staying healthy. You know the drill. Take advice from medical experts and no one else. And with all that said, stay safe, be kind, and go do something that puts a smile on your face. We'll see you next time.